Ladies and gentlemen, this is Momo for Bass Musician Magazine, and this month we have something really exciting for you that has never been done before. I'm going to introduce to you my favorite dude for bass overdrives and preamp in the world, president of Darkglass, Douglas Castro. Bro, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a true honor and pleasure.
You're a facilitator, getting the ultimate bass sound out of these pedals that just make your instrument go boom. Tell me, what ignited your journey, on following through with your vision and dream of starting this original bass company, bro?
I think I started like most people. I was first and foremost a musician, really into heavy metal. At 13, I discovered Iron Maiden, and it was all over from there. So I discovered Meshuggah, in my late teens, and Rush as well. First, very, very passionate about, playing bass and learning how to play bass and taking private lessons and everything. Also, I started realizing sort of the importance of tone. Technically, and learning theory was, of course, really appealing, and I was really immersed in that. But I think as time went on, I kind of realized that the quest for tone was something that I enjoyed almost as much, or probably even more than just playing. It was kind of like this second layer of artistic expression and discovery. So I was practicing a lot, but still, researching different types of gear and techniques and how to get my bass to sound the way, my idols like Geddy Lee and Dick Lovren from Meshuggah, how do they get these tones, and trying to experiment. And I think as time went on, I sort of fell in love with, the tone chasing.
Tone chasing, nice, bro.
By the way, that trademark is from Brian Wampler from Wampler Pedals. So he's always talking about tone chasers. When I was finishing high school, I was really deep into, learning how to play bass, but also into how to sound better. I had two choices, basically. One was to devote myself to being the bass player I could possibly be, or going to a more traditional route and actually start engineering. If I start engineering, I have like a, plan B in case the music career doesn't pan out. And then I can also sort of start working on my own, pedals and amplifiers. And that was the plan going into engineering school. But I think it took me a month of engineering school to realize that, man, this is amazing. I became obsessed with learning more about electronics, but always the intention of applying it into musical products and how do I create my voice. Like before, to find my tone, I was so limited to what other people had created for me. And you get this amplifier, this pedal, or this cabinet, and you have this set of parameters that you can't break away from. And sometimes it was very frustrating because, if you find the right piece of gear, it's amazing, right? Like it's like a gift from the heavens. It's like, oh, it sounds perfect and you're happy. But if you don't, it can be very frustrating because it doesn't matter how you took the knobs and what switches you press, the sound is just not there. Having full access to the circuits, knowing exactly, having the ability to control every single aspect of my sound and learning and discovering how changes in circuitry and configurations and combinations of components and different values, that became my obsession. It took me really like a month or two of studying electronics to realize that this is it for me.
You had a natural ability for that because it's not everybody, that can go from music to the electronic part. Did you have Pat's knowledge of working with electronics, soldering, or did you go into this cold turkey?
I went absolutely cold turkey. The only preparation I had was that my physics teacher in last year of high school, when I told him that I wanted to study electronics, he was actually an amazing teacher. He was very demanding, actually. His philosophy for last year high school physics was that they should be as hard as first year college, because physics and mathematics are sort of the courses that people fail the most often because they can be very challenging coming from high school. His philosophy was to prepare you for that in high school and maximize your likelihood of making it through. Like if you pass, calculus 101 and physics 101, usually what comes after is much more manageable. So he was very demanding, but he was also very devoted to his students. When I told him that I wanted to go study electronics, to build my amplifiers, he actually designed a curriculum just for me. And he gave me different assignments. He gave me different tests. And he told me, man, with this, you're going to kick ass in college. And I got in, and actually on the theory that electromagnetism, I aced everything. I was the first test. I was the only person who passed the test, and I passed really, really, really well. But then when it came to the practical stuff, I was horrible. I had no experience. And then all my classmates were teaching me because I couldn't, put two wires together. So I had to catch up really fast with that. I don't know if I was really gifted or not. And actually now working with Darkglass and with Neural, working with really big teams of engineers, I can say with utmost certainty that I'm by no means the most gifted engineer in the world, because these guys are just so incredible. But I think it was just that sort of that drive and passion to learn and hunger to learn more that made me sort of catch up really quickly. But whether it was how much it was talent and how much was just that I couldn't, and I refused to think about anything else, I don't know. I was just really like, I fell head over heels for learning more about it.
When you say that, you're not necessarily the most gifted engineer in the beginning, the most beautiful thing is I can tell from, having seen you, what you've done and speaking with you, you're a very eloquent speaker. You're very precise and you're very, very focused. These type of elements, once you stick them together, it's the makings for somebody like you who can actually wind up going from nothing and starting an international worldwide company. You also got very lucky by finding a teacher. Me too, when I was younger, I had a couple of teachers who took a liking to me and give you that energy, to make you go forward because they actually believed in you. And a lot of teachers won't actually do that because you're just part of the class, I think it's so amazing. You found your true calling.
Yeah.
And I think it suits you just so well. I mean, Douglas Castro is the guy who started Darkglass, and that's going in the history books, bro.
Thanks, man.
So tell me something.
Sure.
Something happens for the very first time, okay? There's that moment that gets imprinted in your mind, your first bass, your first car, your first kiss, and so on.
Absolutely.
Do you remember that thrilling moment at the very first time that you got to show somebody your first invention? Was it everything that you thought, or did you have to go back to the drawing board for a moment?
I have both moments. I didn't nail it on the first time. It was maybe 2021 at the time. I started designing my first, on circuit. But until then, I was just playing around, experimenting with different things. I had graduated already by then, and I started building and modifying stuff for friends. So, for example, a friend of mine would have a tube amplifier and wanted, an extra gain stage or more gain, and I would charge him, $50 and fix it. Or like friends of mine needed servicing. So that's how I paid the bill. So that was my job in the morning, like 9 to 3 or 4. I would work on that. I would also modify pedals. For my friends only, I would also build, like an overdrive pedal, and then during the evenings I would work on my own designs, and that's when things got sort of very interesting. And I remember the fear before I started, because in my mind I knew that was always the end goal. After modifying and repairing so much and learning a lot from other people's circuits, try and see whether I could make something of my own that would be good. And that was very, very uncertain, and that was a very, very scary time. And I remember that it got to a point where I was okay, like, let's just when you jump. And there's no going back. If you've ever skydived, when you jump,
free fall.
The moment that you jump, you're like, shit, like you can't go back into the plane. Like that's it. You just have to go. I remember that time when I said, okay, like I will do the bass distortion pedal of my dreams, or I'm going to die trying. It takes as long as it takes, and I will, just go fully into it.
And that was the B3K, your very first thing, right?
That was the B3K, yeah. And I remember 6 months or so into it, of doing like a lot of computer simulations and breadboarding. Basically, the process was very simple. So I would build our rough prototype. I would start with like input and output stages, no distortion, right? Like just get signal through the circuit. And then I would start adding elements and taking things away and tweaking. Then I started, simulating on a computer just to be able to see, okay, if I change this configuration, if I replace this component by this one, what happens, and try to visualize and actually create a connection between the visualization that I would see on the computer screen and what my ears were hearing, and just trying to build that link. And that process was very intense. I think that was the first time where I sort of got really, really, really immersed into something. I mean, immersed to the point where I wouldn't go out, and I didn't care about like social life. Like really, I mean, it's kind of sick. Like I had a girlfriend at the time. I remember like we would go out to meet friends and dinners, and everybody was like playing board games and having beer. And I would be with a notepad trying to like write down, maybe if I change this resistor to 120 kilos instead of 100, maybe like I'll solve this awful resonance I'm having. And just like I wouldn't care about anything, and I was a really horrible person to be around. Really, no. I really feel bad for anyone who was my friend or had a relationship with me at the time. That was the first time where I actually realized that I would have that level of obsession. And within reason, it's focused, but I think at that level, it was almost pathological.
Oh, dude, man. I am telling you, that is so funny. I think a mark of a true artist and a guy who wants to get from nothing to where you are if you are not obsessed. Whether you're a musician, a company owner, an inventor, you are finished.
Yeah.
You can't go to that level of the top unless you are obsessed.
Yeah, and that's true. And I think the main reason is that it's just so hard. I mean, it's just so difficult. All of these sort of like cool things that I've been fortunate enough to do with my life, all of them have been way more difficult than I could have ever imagined. Every single step of the way has been a lot tougher, a lot more, challenging intellectually, emotionally, a lot more painful, taking a lot longer. It's sort of like going after these things really tests you and tests everything about you. Everything everything that you would like to think about yourself is put to the test. Everything that you wish you were gets put to the test. And I think at the end you realize whether you have it or you don't. And I think the only way to go through all that pain and frustration and uncertainty is to actually be fully obsessed. Like, in a way, if it doesn't work out, you might as well die, because like there's no life if it doesn't work out.
I think that also, like, that frame of mind, what it does is it gives you not only longevity, but you never see the end of where you're going, because there's always something new. You're chasing the next idea that you're close to, the next idea that you're passionate about, because you've been so submerged into what it is that you're doing that you become a master, an aficionado at your own dream, you know what I mean? And that is important. Do you still talk to that old girlfriend, by the way?
No. God bless her, though. She was a very, very good person. It's just the one thing that nobody talks about, like I'm now, it's a great honor to be interviewed by you, and sort of like I get to be featured in magazines or go to NAM and take a lot of pictures with people. But the people that stick with us, man, like they don't get the credit they deserve. Like my wife, she has like infinite patience. Like she's so understanding and supportive. I think for the last 8 weeks, aside from NAM, I've left home every day at 8 a.m. and I don't think I've arrived any day earlier than 10 or 11 in the evening. And I think it takes a very, very special kind of person to
put up with that shit.
Yeah, man. Something came up, and also like, well, right now we work with people all over the world, right? So sometimes it's not like nothing happened, but I have a call with a guy who's in the West Coast, and it's a 10-hour difference. Like, we need to talk at 11 p.m. Like that's the only time we have to actually plan the upcoming week. The schedule sometimes can be really, really intense, and it's hard for me to keep up. But also, I think, man, if me and my wife didn't work out, I don't know if I would find anyone else who would put up with this shit.
I think people like us are really lucky to be able to have women at our side that understand and that put up with our shit.
Sure.
As we move along. And when we're lucky enough to find people that get that, I think it really adds to our personal growth, or like you said, you got no time for a relationship because you're so obsessed, and the best of both worlds is we're very, very lucky.
Very, very lucky. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the time I'm actually very stressed, but I think at the same time, there's always this feeling of like, how the hell did I get so lucky? I think one thing that helps me a lot is that my wife is the same. She's actually a scientist, and she's also extremely driven and focused and relentless. So if I have to stay in the office until midnight, like she has also sometimes she has to, there is some deadline for a, paper submission or something, and then she also has to push really hard. Like, we're both on the same path in a way. And I think that really, really, really helps. I don't have to explain why I'm so, obsessed about what I do, because she's just the same way.
Like right now, I was in a bad mood before, and I did something a little bit stupid, and I kind of raised the temperature for no reason at all. So I'm going to publicly apologize right now to my wife that is on the other end of the camera, who's there for me at all times. She is nodding her head saying she can't believe, but I will publicly put this in the edit to show you that we are talking about a very important subject, sweetheart. Please forgive me.
Good move to apologize on the internet. That's
publicly, dude. That means you're really getting down to the truth.
Must have really screwed up before if you're apologizing from the whole world.
Oh man. Well, we've been together a very long time, and there's nothing that can separate us. She's my best friend. She is my other half, and she is everything. Without her, I am zero. So it is. It's really important. There comes a time and the point in the growth of a new company or upon expansion where you start to consider or you're approached by partners, investors to take company to the next level, you know? I believe this happens at least a few times to a guy like you before you realize that this is not necessarily going to work out due to conflict of vision or uncompatibility. You know, a lot of companies lose control when there's other bottom lines besides, you know, the original vision. What's your take on letting people into your vision for the better or for the worse of the company?
So I have actually both experiences. With Darkglass, I was fortunate enough that the know-how and skills I had were enough to start the company and get it to like a pretty decent size. There was no big need to hire a lot of people, which means that there was no really big pressure for funding and making payroll and things like that. So I actually started hiring people only when I could afford it. I'd be responsible with that. Like I wouldn't want to hire somebody and then have to let them go after 2 months because I can't make, you know, payroll.
Very kind of you.
I mean, that firing people is one of the worst things of the job. So it's like I will do anything to never do it again. It happens sometimes. With Darkglass, we're very fortunate that we didn't need any investors at any point. And to this point, actually, Darkglass has not taken any investment outside funding of any kind. So actually, I own most of the company. And then some key people in the team also have shares. So I have vested key people who have helped grow the company. And that is something also that I'm looking into more, sort of how to reward the people who have proven themselves, you know, crucial to the company growing and doing well, not just with a good salary, but also, you know, with equity. And then with Neural, which is my new company that we started a year ago, that was sort of the opposite approach. It's a much more traditional startup in the sense of the word that me and my co-founder had some really, really ambitious and really cool ideas, but we need to hire a really, really big team of really talented engineers to work with us and help us, you know, actualize them. So actually with Neural, we took the more traditional route where we raised funding. And I think like with anything, with any kind of relationship, it all comes down to the people you find and the people you encounter. So with investors, you hear nightmare stories of people that just try to control your vision and try to tell you what to do. People that have no place of especially in music, that's something that's so artistic and so specific and niche. Like if you're not a musician, you just cannot design good musical products. Like you can't. No, I mean you can. Like I mean, dude, I'm telling you, like in the same way, like, dude, I can't design an airplane. Like I don't know how to drive a car. Like I'm not gonna design a fucking helicopter. Like it's not my thing. I don't know how to do it. Maybe I could learn how to do it if you give me, you know, a decade or two. But I'm not gonna go there and tell people who've been doing it for a decade how to do it. Right? With investors, sometimes you get these people that try to assert themselves and try to prove that they're smarter than you by telling you like the dumbest shit possible. And I've luckily never gone through it, but I have a lot of friends who have companies in like all kinds of companies, and you hear horror stories, man, like really, really, really ruthless, evil stuff.
Yeah. Evil stuff,
dude. Evil, like really, like greedy, evil, horrendous things, like horror stories. Luckily enough, with Neural, we raised a very small amount. We're fortunate enough that the products the software that we've developed and released has been successful, like beyond our wildest expectations. So actually, there's no need for capital there. And the few people that we have invited to help us with funding are actually some of the smartest and also nicest people we've ever met. So in that sense, it's like getting married to the right or the wrong person, right? Like a marriage can be the best thing that ever happens to you, or it can wreck your life. It all comes down to the chemistry and the people you're with. Is it a good match or not? I think it can be both ways. And I think if you like in business, if you find the right partners and the right investors, like they can really empower you and really, really, really help you build a beautiful, awesome, gigantic, wonderful thing, or they can grind your energy to the ground and just make you hate life. I think in that sense, you have to be extremely selective and very responsible and careful with who you get married to. No, really, like, dude, if you have a partner, like if you start a business with someone and you're both partners, for as long as that company exists, you're married to them. And if you're running that company, or if you are really devoted to the company, chances are that your livelihood and your future and your family's future is tied up to the success of that venture. You might as well be married to them, because it will take a decade or two for you to sort of like make it. So in that sense, I think it's very important to find the right people and to be very selective with who you're getting married to.
You need to communicate like your personal relationship right from the beginning. I believe that the second there's a situation, you need to confront it positively right away, so that there's not that buildup like in a couple where all of a sudden nobody says anything, and then one day they shoot out 20 things they think about you.
Yeah.
They never told you, right?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, like being direct and actually not being afraid of, it all comes down to insecurity. Like if you're really insecure about people's loyalty and affection, you will walk on eggshells and you will let things bubble up. But I think if you're confident on the strength of the relationships you have a lot of headroom to be like really candid and honest about things, even difficult things, especially difficult things. I think you can have very difficult conversations with people that respect you, as long as you express yourself, you can express yourself very clearly and emphatically, with respect and with a sense of, compassion. And to be honest, I have not always done this. Like I have been extremely immature and harsh in the past with people I've worked with. And I do appreciate that some of these people have actually, stuck with me despite that. But I think that's also one of the things that come down to maturity.
By the way, I love the way you compared what you just said to headroom. I personally enjoy looking at the aspects of technical stuff on pedals like compression, high end, EQ, bottom end, and apply that to actual humans. Buddy, you need to stop talking so loud. Let's bring the limiter up on you so that we can limit your peaks.
Sure.
I can't hear you speaking. We need a little bit more high ends and some low mids there. What's happening? Do you find that all your indelvement that you've buried into the signal paths and stuff, right, that it helps you actually look at people's situations, right?
I think once you grasp a very deep understanding of anything, you sort of start seeing it in all ways, and you actually use those mental models that you develop to understand these, abstract, complex things, and you realize that they can actually be useful in all sorts of ways. So yeah, I mean, you can use equalization, compression, limiting, dynamic range. You can use all of these concepts that are from, audio engineering into, relationships and anything really.
Making a pizza.
Actually, that's very interesting. I realized when I was designing my, the B3K, that I actually had synesthesia, which means that I had two senses linked together. It's actually it's a physiological problem with the brain, actually. I got myself checked out and I didn't have a stroke or anything or brain damage, luckily. But yeah, I can actually hear flavors. It's very bizarre. If I have a cup of coffee, I can actually taste the coffee through the frequency. I can see the EQ curve of a cup of coffee or a sandwich. It's very bizarre.
Dude, I knew you were that kind of guy because, when you bury yourself that deep into something where you bring everything apart and you're that deep, and I can tell by how your product works, sounds, that there's so much research and development that went into there. But for one to be able to bring that onto real life, to say, I hear flavors, because I do a shitload of editing, for years now, right? So I always tell people, there's almost no conversation that I can have with anybody that I haven't edited those words in a different order, in that order, at one point in my life. And I have a photogenic memory, right?
Okay.
So I can't tell you how much it has helped me to be able to take all that personal stuff that you lock yourself up with, frequencies, paths, layers, harmony, compression, all that stuff, and bring that onto real life. It makes you kind of like an X-ray machine, a CAT scan. Somebody opens their mouth before they finish their sentence. You already know what they're going to say, and you know whether you can feel their temperature coming up. Oh, the limiter's starting to slack. We need to bring this back in. I love that. And I don't think that most people are even aware. And you're the first person that I have ever heard explain it that way. So cool, bro. So cool.
It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre to always be hearing things even when you're eating. It's a strange thing. And I don't know. I wish it was easier for me to disconnect more. I think that's one of the the benefits are evident, right? Like Darkglass is sort of an outcome of being that single-mindedly obsessed with one thing. But the drawbacks are also the price is high sometimes. I think not being able to disconnect is actually very very, very difficult. I would like to hear your opinion as an artist. Right now, I'm a bit more involved in the entrepreneurship side of things and on the leadership side of things. So I've been actually talking to a lot of CEOs and founders of different companies, and one common thread that I find is that you're never not thinking about your venture. You're never not thinking about the next product, the next project. You're never not trying to solve a problem or thinking about, a pain in the ass employee that you shouldn't have hired or whatever it is, right? Like financial issues, or there's always something that occupies your whole attention. And that makes it very hard at least for me to care for things outside of what I do. I think it's probably the same for you as a professional bass player.
It's exactly pretty much what you're saying. We're fortunate that we have personal people in our lives who understand that, so we're not totally alone. Then I guess once you go out in the street between point A and point B, if you bump into somebody, you can be nice to them, even a stranger, etc. And these little moments kind of give you this feeling that you've, kind of interjected into humanity besides being locked into. I mean, you basically are running a small planet that you launched into orbit, right? When you want to manage a planet with all the people and all their opinions and the roads and the lights and the electricity and the whole thing, you cannot not do that, or that cannot happen, which is okay if you don't want to be the president of a company that doesn't have a one-shot idea, and you're not a one-shot guy. I think it's also amazing that you niched and you picked one product for one thing and you expanded on that, because a lot of companies, they're going to try and take it all the instruments.
Yeah.
I've always told people, there's something about bass players that are particularly cool. Nothing against everybody else in the musical genre, but bass players, to me, they're the most open-minded. Yes. They're the ones that are willing to try the coolest new stuff.
I mean, you nailed it 100%, and I think I got very lucky that to have fallen in love with bass guitar. I think it was the most fertile ground to something like along the lines of what I wanted to do. Like for the longest time, nobody was doing anything for bass. Like all bass players made work. It was like guitar products that sort of you kind of like found ways around to, make them sound in a way that wasn't counterproductive for the role of a bassist in a band context.
Exactly.
And I think because of that, there's like an inherent open-mindedness. Dude, you're right. Like some bass players, if you tell them that if they eat dirt, their bass will sound better, like a bunch of guys will try it. Like it's truly amazing how open-minded bass players are. It's difficult to think what would have happened if I would have started with guitar, because there's so many people just doing kind of like the same things in guitar. Yeah, like you said, I think bass players are like wonderfully open-minded and receptive to new things. And dude, bass players, like they'll try it out. Like maybe it sucks, like maybe it doesn't work for them, but they're probably the people who are most likely to try something out, and that's beautiful.
Well, it's amazing. I have to tell you that me being like mainly a 8 and a 12-string bass player, your product, especially when I use the parallel out, to get my 2 channels. What happens is, I get to really sound like a bass and a guitar at the same time.
And actually, one thing that I have to like give you a lot of props for, you have demoed some of the hardest pedals that we make to demo, and I have yet to find a bad sound in any of your videos. Like, to be honest, every time Lauren, shout out to Lauren, our artist relations guy, who is a wizard. Lauren is a black belt.
He's amazing. I love that guy.
He has the highest energy of anyone ever. That the guy doesn't get tired. He's incredible.
Oh, he's a machine.
Yeah, he's a machine. Lauren is incredible. She also works for Dingwall and Zon, so he's very deep in the industry, and he's kind of a legend in the industry. But yeah, every time Lauren sent me a video you sent him, I would check it out, a bit skeptic, and then I would hear the sounds and I'm like, wow, how the hell is that my pedal? Like, man, you know how to get the most out of gear. So like, that's really, really, really impressive. So yeah, I think you have a really good talent for impressive talent for that.
Thank you, bro. But I have to tell you, like, when I plug into that pedal, it's like everything that you believe in was almost like it was meant for me. We think very similar. You are very direct, you're very precise, and you're also highly fucking intelligent. Like,
oh, thank you.
And perceptive. And I got to tell you, like, intelligence turns me on. There's something about knowledge and intelligence that turns me on more than most things in life. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. And Thank you, I guess. With bass guitar, actually, like it's pretty incredible. One of my favorite bass players of all time. I'll give two examples. John Stockman from Carnival, who's also a dear friend and a business partner. And we developed the whole Alpha Omega product series with Darkglass.
Amazing product.
Thank you. I'm very lucky to have become really good friends with some of my heroes, and that's a very rare thing. And I'm very appreciative for that. John is one of my favorite bass players, and
he's amazing.
He's amazing, and he's an amazing composer as well. He's one of the main composers in Carnival, actually. So all of that beautiful, amazingly complex music he's a big part of that. One of my other favorite bass players at the polar opposite of the spectrum, Billy Sheehan, who can play anything. There is no piece of music composed in the known universe that Billy Sheehan can't play at full tempo. He can play anything.
And he's a nice guy also. He's a very nice guy.
He's a very, very kind, humble, respectful, all-around good guy. I met him very briefly. And actually, this was many years ago, so I'm sure he doesn't remember. I was nobody back then, and he was very nice.
You're kind of impossible to forget, my bro.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. You are.
Thank you. Justin Chancellor from Tool, another of my all-time favorite bass players. Very similar thing. Like he's not the shredding guy. He doesn't play super fast, but every note they play is spot on. They're very precise. But just how the bass fits in the song, the tone is legendary. And I think these bass players that can sort of craft these, like larger than life sounds are amazing. And some of these bands, like they're known for the bass sound, like Carnival. If you hear Carnival, Goliath right away, right? Like Simple Boy right away, and it's this massive bass that rumbles the whole room. With Tool, the same thing, you think Schism and all of these wonderful songs, and that's a very, very fascinating thing. And I think because bass has kind of like this very broad spectral frequency where you can play with the sub bass, you can play with the mids, low mids, high mids, all the way up to treble, right? Like with bass, if you play 5 strings, the low B is around 30 hertz. It's almost subsonic, right? It's right there at that limit to which we can hear. With bass, you can cut through in all kinds of places and in all kinds of ways, and that's really wonderful. But I think this is why so many bass players actually have this affinity for synthesizers. Like Geddy Lee, for example.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. That is the thing I love about your pedals. Is I get the sound that's close to a freaking bass synth.
And the duality fuzz, you mean? The fuzz pedal.
Yeah. It's so sick. I personally think you need to send out some Darkglass diapers to people with some of your next pedals because they will be taking a dump. And you want to be able to keep the house clean because that's how much bottom end your shit's giving out,
Thanks, man.
Oh, man. When an artist writes a hit song that affects people around the world, there really must be that kind of thrill and rush,
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
I've seen their work affecting those people in such a positive way. I want to talk about your thrill factor when it comes to what you feel when you hear like the feedback and all the comments and stuff on knowing that you've made that many people happy. You're like a fucking rock star, you know?
Thanks. Plan A was to be an actual rock star, and that didn't pan out. I wasn't that good, so it's cool to sort of have gotten the chance to make a small impact on music, in my own way. It's a crazy thing. Like I still remember one day I had to pay some bills for Darkglass, like pay salaries and stuff. So I opened the bank account, and there was a wire from Foo Fighters, like Foo Fighters LLC. I asked Lauren, "Hey, do you know something about our AR guy? Do you know something about this?" And I was like, yeah, no, they bought a bunch of our pedals. They paid for them. And she was like, yeah, they insisted that, like, we don't need the money. So, like, and I thought that was really cool that they insisted on like, do the Foo Fighters ask for anything? Like, you just send them whatever they want. Or, like, they're the biggest or one of the biggest rock bands in the world,
I fucking love that band.
Yeah, so, if you send them a, like, $400 pedal, like, it's for the visibility you get, it's a really good investment for us, to promote your company and your brand. When I go to investors, they see Foo Fighters. Holy shit! Okay, like this guy's legit. We give them a small discount, but they paid almost full price for their gear. That was one of those like holy shit moments, and that was really cool. But to be fair, it's almost dangerous for me to emphasize these moments because these moments are the highlights. Like these moments are the ones that come, once a quarter, once a month, once a year. The rest of the time, you still have to put in the work and do a lot of uncomfortable, difficult, challenging things when nobody's looking at you. There's nobody to, celebrate your accomplishments. There's no one to celebrate your relentlessness or your courage or anything. You just need to, bite down and get the work done. Sometimes, at a great personal cost. A lot of people, me included, when you start a company, you have all these images of glory and success and financial success and being a rock star and all of these things. And if you're lucky enough, some of those things might happen, but they are the exceptions. Most of the days are actually just really, really, really hectic, demanding, challenging, difficult. And you need to be able to fall in love with that. Like, you cannot rely on the highlights to keep you driven, because if you do, you're gonna quit, because those come so rarely, and they come so rarely and they last very little. When something awesome happens, you might have time to feel good and celebrate for a few hours or a few days, but then the next crisis will happen and you'll have to scramble around and trying to figure things out. It's the same with music. Like, I mean, you're an accomplished bass player. Like, the most glorious moment is when you have like a perfect gig, right? Like you play a gig, you play a good set, the audience loves it, the band, everything is smooth, everything clicks, everything is perfect. But that is what, 1-2 hours? And what about the 20 years that got you to play at that level? Years and of like daily or 3 times a week rehearsing with the band to get the set so tight. Success is dictated by what you do and what you love when nobody's looking at you, when nobody's watching you.
Oh, you are so good at what you're saying. I always tell people, you see this guy that you think that popped out of nowhere, that all of a sudden you never heard of them and then they're mega stars? Most of the time, these guys have been going 10, 20 years.
That's a decade, yeah.
Beforehand, you know what I mean? And you have no idea because you just heard of them now.
In startups, they always say that like every overnight success takes about a decade.
I think it's true.
Yeah. There's a really good book. There's a Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers. Great book. And there's a chapter about the Beatles. He sort of goes through the history of how the Beatles, became the Beatles. He goes through of all the years and years of playing daily, in really shitty bars with full of drunk assholes and just the roughest gigs you can imagine, playing a gig and having people throw beer at them, or having 6 people watching the freaking Beatles. Ringo is there and John Lennon is there and there's 6 dudes watching. And they did that for years and years, and they kept at it, and didn't give up, and all the labels turned them down. Once they made it, it was a no-brainer, right? Of course, the Beatles are going to be huge.
Classic.
These stories for me are very important, because if you want to start something new, and if you want to do things your own way, you will go through that kind of grueling decade. Risk putting everything on the line, putting your heart and soul into something, and most likely in the beginning, you'll get the feeling that nobody gives a shit. And that can be so discouraging and disheartening.
I think that almost every major band that started the music industry all had to go through that. The only people that pop out of nowhere is when this whole American Idol-y thingy came out, and it was projects that were generated by producers, and they say, well, let's take this pretty girl or this cute-looking guy and let's shove some studio musicians, put them on TV and turn him into a star overnight. You know what I mean? It
doesn't work out so well. I'm sure that the results of that have been really underwhelming for the people who engineered that, the people who came up with it. I think authenticity is very important. And I think people can really see through bullshit for the most part. If you're not really genuine about what you do, if you're faking it, people can tell. Yeah, people can see through that. And I think being true to who you are.
A solid foundation is a solid foundation, right? It starts with that. The years that you put into it becomes the foundation.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
You've been in the business for quite a while now. What has changed the most from when you started to right now?
When I started Darkglass, there were maybe 2-3 companies doing really good bass distortions. Now there is, dozens or more. Supply for bass players has increased a lot, and I think that's a really good thing. I think one of the other things was that back in the day, it was very rare for a bass player to use a pedal. Maybe a compressor and a tuner, and that was it. Nowadays, you see bass players that have bigger pedal boards than their guitarists. And God bless them. All kidding aside, I think all of this acceptance from bass players adopting the concept of the pedal and just use it as a tool for further expanding their sonic possibilities and letting the gear become another outlet for musical expression is one of the things that I think has changed the most. You can buy one pedal and it can give you a sound that 20 years ago you needed a whole rack system to achieve.
Exactly.
And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think great tone is more available now than ever, and I'm doing plugins now with Neural DSP, guitar plugins that we've done with Mike 14, your fellow Canadian guitar amplifier genius. We're able to cram, a $3,000-$4,000 amplifier, a $1,500 cabinet, and say, I don't know, $3,000 to $4,000 worth of microphones into a €99 plugin, $110 plugin. Because of technology and our modeling, secret sauce, we're able to make it unperceivable from the real thing.
Oh man, that's amazing. I know, it's so amazing, and the people that fight that, it's I don't know.
They're done. I mean, like that. In 5 years, it's not going to be an argument anymore. There's so much dogma and sort of like unfunded claims in audio because it's highly subjective. But the moment you do a blind test, all of those things disappear. The moment you like literally blindfold a person and tell them, okay, like which one is which. Many times they can even tell that you changed back and forth eight times. Like psychoacoustics are really powerful, and we're all vulnerable to this. Like I am just as prone to it as anyone else. Like the first blind test you ever do is one of the most humbling things that can happen to you as a musician or an audio engineer, because all of the things you thought you knew and all of these expectations and things that you wanted to believe about how good your hearing is are gone, and it's so difficult to distinguish nowadays.
I mean, even with your pedals, right? Like I always tell people this. I say, okay, let's talk about your amp for a minute. Get me the best bass sounds you can get out of this amp right now.
Sure.
Get the best bass amp. Then let's shove the Darkglass on there. And all of a sudden, everything changes and then some because of the other possibilities. It's fucking massive sounding. I got people that just like, I'm going to start just taking the look on people's faces when you press the on button, because it's actually pretty shocking, and to be also able to have it in a plug-in format that lets you walk around with a laptop and actually press a button in their bathroom if you want and record a sound like you say, where you needed 500 pounds of gears and thousands of dollars a mic and an engineer, and you get presets that you could save of your sounds and your different basses and shit. You gotta say, I don't care what the fuck you guys think. This is the future, period. You know what I mean?
I mean, to be honest, at this point, I would say it's the present. I can tell you, without going to any details with the numbers, it took Neural 6 months to achieve the growth that Darkglass did in 3 years.
There you go.
I resisted the whole digital thing because I'm an analog engineer. Like digital is something that was new to me, something that I had to catch up with and learn really, really, really quickly. We all resist change. Like we all resent change. We all resent the discomfort that comes from the need to change. Like anyone else, I also tried to fight it back and realized, no, like it's never going to happen. But then I realized it's inevitable. Like digital is the future. It's not even a question for debate. And that's how Neural sort of happened. It was just, I just realized that, man, this is a skill that we need to master and acquire like very, very, very rapidly.